I really want people to love this game. And in the current state, it's not good for new players. Hey!
At last.
Not easy, dude! Woo! This game is hard now, man. Okay, so I just beat the last boss. After the new patch, I do have some thoughts. I know the general response to the patch is that it is too hard. As being a really seasoned Darkest Dungeon player, I completely agree. 100%, I think this patch is not fair. And I think it's not fair knowing who this game is made for. But I think it's going the right direction. And I think when we're talking about game development, we're talking about a pendulum, right? It goes this way, it goes that way. This way a little less, that way a little less. And the idea is eventually you settle on an appropriate difficulty. We are in one of the painful swings because it's the first major swing we've had. We had a few small quality of life changes in the first week, but this is our first major patch. If we're talking the original launch version of the early access Darkest Dungeon 2, there was a major problem in the fact that players who were familiar with Darkest Dungeon were beating it on their first, second, third, or fourth run, right? That's not what you really want when you get to a new game. You want to unlock stuff, especially when it's a roguelike. Very few people would be able to claim they did that in a game like Hades, which has a lot of similarity, right? As far as the style of reset and progression, unlocking things, adding things to the loot pool as well. And so you want to experience the game before you dominate the game. You want the game to dominate you a little bit. And so all of us veterans complained. And a lot of the complaints had to do with us not understanding what the vision of the game is, because accessibility is the name of the game here. And I think the big confusing thing is accessibility is not associated with difficulty as much as people think. There's an integrated difficulty system in Darkest Dungeon 2 where you can choose a path based off difficulty. You can be aware of all the factors. When you go to a path, you see their stress levels at the bottom and you know left or right they're going to approve of, and you have a bunch of decisions to make. Now, often we're just hauling ass down the corridor and we look at the thing and go, I want the story. And so you go that way and then like all your dudes at the bottom freak out, right? There's a lot of factors we're not taking into consideration when we're talking about that, but that's how the game is meant to be played. You're supposed to be aware of those things. The idea is that the game can be easy for those who want it to be easy and hard for those who want it to be hard, and then the rewards are supposed to be there. Our major complaint as seasoned players previously with the last version of this is that there was no reward for doing the hardest things, and there's also a misunderstanding that beating the game was the hardest things. Clearly, the lair bosses are the hardest thing in the game in general, up until this patch. And so last patch, some of us would go for them, some of us wouldn't, and a lot of people didn't go for them and would just beat the game over and over and boast about their 12-game win streaks and say the game was too easy. Well, originally the idea was you're maybe not doing the things that are challenging for you, but there was also no reason to do it. And so as we're getting these balancing patches, we're seeing things come into play, new ideas and all these things, and a lot of it's in response to seasoned players saying this game's too easy. And so the pendulum swung. We have a full rewriting of the stress system, and it's hard now. So unfortunately, the players who were already struggling with the previous system can't play the game anymore. And that's not good. Now, knowing game design, it's going to swing back and it'll be a little too easy again, and then it'll be a little too hard and will center. But in its current state, this is not playable for new players. The stress system's too high, especially because we have a required stress level of 5 before you can do most of the stress healing. Some of the abilities should probably be rebalanced. If I had a list of demands, it would be Ounce of Prevention would be able to heal you at 4 stress. That way you can balance on that line of 3 and 4, which seems like is the intention of the game. The goal of the game, it seems, is that we as players are continually having to use different resources to balance the stress levels of our party so that they're sitting in that 3 zone and that 4, but preferably 3, so you can get the positive interactions taking place, right? But that's where we want to be, and the game is just like, for a lot of the time, it's just one notch over. The Jester can heal up to 3 stress at 5, and so that puts you down pretty low, and that one I wouldn't change at all, but Ounce of Prevention I would, because I do want more options as a player. I want to be able to choose the characters I want, and I want to be not pushed into certain things. The big challenge is, I'm a seasoned player, and I know how to think those thoughts, but people who are just getting into Darkest Dungeon, who should have access to the game beyond the first 4 fights, are getting decimated by this system. It's not immediately rewarding enough for them to continue to do that. So we need the pendulum to swing back, and we need it to get easy again. Not as easy as it was, but not this hard. The boss, the last boss, I'll say that knowing the boss was going to be harder made me make a lot of decisions in game. I no longer was challenging myself needlessly because I was bored, but I was preparing for an epic battle, which I did end up getting, and we did very well in it, but we did well in it because we managed the relationships of our characters and stuff like that. And so I think that the boss is probably balanced right at this point, but I think the stress system on the way there needs a little bit of love. The nerfs that happened to some of the characters, some of them were needed, and you know what? We need some buffs too. We need pistol shot to actually do some damage. It's a gun. It shouldn't do 3 damage. Pistol shot should do more. There should be some ranged damage units, and I know that eventually as the game, again, it's early access. It's an early access game. As we get more ranged units, Musketeer, Arbalist, or Houndmaster, we're able to do some focused damage to the back row, but we don't have enough of that yet. We have daggers or things like that, right, which have high crit, which are great, but we need more. So the game just came out. I'm not expecting new characters in an early access version. I'm just not. But the tools I have, I would like to have filling those voids, the range damage, I'd like that. So the balancing on this was our nerf patch. It's really, really hard, and where I'm enjoying the difficulty level, it also has made it so that it is not accessible to people anymore. If we can move it from 5 stress down to 4 for some of the abilities, I think that would be great. I think that would be wonderful. I like the change that's been done to bolster. I'd like a few more ways to get rid of horror, but these things are going to come with balancing and through reports and through videos and stuff like that. And so all in all, here's really where I land on the patch. It's too hard, and I understand why it's too hard. I hope that we, as the Darkest Dungeon community, are capable of encouraging new players to enjoy the game when it's in its hardest state so that they stick with it long enough to experience the rebalancing. Because I really want people to love this game. And in the current state, it's not good for new players. In its current state, it's a challenge for veterans, and that's great, except this game can't win if new people aren't joining us. So the patch is both absolutely fantastic because everything's going in the right direction, because I get the goal is to make it so that we're managing stress on characters for this journey and earning friendships. I love the direction we went, but I just want it to swing back a tiny bit so that it's manageable. So awesome patch. Please give me another patch so that our friends can love the game as well. I love this game and I want other people to love it. And I hope that the new people are not too put off by this so that they won't continue to play.